All right, guys, just a few of the items I'm going to show here, what I use here in the garage to put in a front pump seal in a transmission. I will replace a front pump seal in the transmission every single time that I separate an engine from a transmission. I don't care if it's just a few days the transmission's out, I will still replace it. It's just cheap insurance. I learned a long time ago of not replacing one. I had an engine out of a car for about a month, and then I put another engine in and I didn't replace that seal, and then it leaked after that. So I just replace it every time. I use Vaseline petroleum jelly on pretty much any rubber surface like that new seal, and I wipe some on the O-ring on the end of the shaft that goes into the torque converter, and also the stem snout on the converter. So this is an old exhaust tip, and that's my seal installer, and you can see how fast it actually works. But I've been using this for like 20 years. So, redneck, man. All right, guys, so I got the flex plate on. So basically the last videos that I was doing of the hardtop there several months ago, I ran into a flex plate issue, and I don't think I ever touched on what the outcome was of that. What I'd done was, now this is a 400 small block Chevy, so it's external balance flex plate. So there's a counterweight welded to the flex plate on the back side here. So a regular small block Chevy, besides the one-piece remains, this is the only small block two-piece remain that has a counterweight on the flex plate, basically. All the others are internal balance, but the 400 is external balance like a big block. So the flex plate that came on this engine it was cracked around it, so I needed a new one. I had bought one from Summit. It was their brand on the box, like their name was on the plain white box. It was like 26 bucks or something. It was very inexpensive. So I bought it. When it came in, I went to put it on here. None of the holes lined up. Well, I take that back. I think a few of them lined up, but there was one that at least a quarter of the hole was off. So I would have had to open those holes up to make that flex plate fit. So at that point, it made me worry that there's probably, you know, if that's that far off, what else is wrong with the flex plate? You know what I mean? So I went in there and I put a review on Summit's website on that particular part. You know, there's reviews on every part. So I pulled up the part number and I went in there and wrote a review, and I said, my bolt holes didn't line up on mine. Well, Summit seen that, and they emailed me and they said, sorry for the inconvenience. We'll send you another flex plate back, or send you another flex plate. And I said, that would be wonderful. I don't want the same exact one. You know, send me, you know, a different one. But I would have been glad to pay the extra money for a different one. So what they ended up doing was they sent me another flex plate, but in the meantime, I ordered a TCI flex plate for this engine. Now here's where it gets confusing. So this one, the replacement is on the way, but I didn't pay any attention to that. Like, I wasn't even thinking about it, because these are 168 tooth flex plates, so they are large. Now I'm running a mini starter, and I want the mini starter further inboard closer to the block, so I wanted a smaller diameter 153 tooth flex plate. This is the difference. This is a 153 tooth flex plate. This is a 168. So when you put this on there, the small one, your mini starter, if you have the extra holes in the block, on the block itself of the mini starter, you can move your starter more inboard and it's further away from your header. And that's what I wanted. So the one that Summit was sending me, I have another 400 small block over there in the corner that needs rebuilt, but it's a complete engine. But I thought, well, the one they send me, I'll just use it for that one when that time comes. So I just, you know, out of sight, out of mind, wasn't worried about the replacement they were sending me for the one that didn't fit. So I went ahead and got on Summit's website looking for a 153 tooth small diameter flex plate for the 400, that way I can move the mini starter in. This is what came up at Summit's website, and when you check the fit, it says it fits a 400 small block. In the picture, I seen that counterweight on there. That counterweight is what they put on the 87 up one-piece rear main small block Chevrolets. They have a counterweight on them, and it looks identical to that, because here is an original one-piece rear main flex plate, and it's the same counterweight. So when I seen that in the picture, it made me worry that this probably, their information is incorrect. I called TCI and I talked to a guy on the phone, and I told him I am looking at this part number flex plate, and I wanted to make sure that it does fit a 400 small block Chevrolet with a two-piece rear main. So he looks it up on his computer and he said, yep, says it fits conventional small block. And I was like, okay, great. So I ordered it from Summit. I waited and waited because I was planning on putting the engine in the hardtop for that show, you know. I waited and waited and waited, and after like a week, I went in there and called them, and come to find out they were doing a warehouse reorganization, so they weren't shipping anything out. I didn't get an email, I didn't get a phone call, you know, telling me that any of this was happening. When I ordered that flex plate that showed they had 7 or 8 or something in stock, but they were all at that location that they're doing the warehouse reorganization. So by the time this comes in, I think I'd already quit working on the hardtop, but this flex plate is not for a 400 small block, even though the guy at TCI on the phone told me, oh yeah, it fits conventional small block. Well, it probably does fit a conventional small block, but it's for 87 and up. So that was, they've got a mess up in their computers what it is. So I wasn't very happy with that, with Summit or TCI over that. And here's why it will not fit a 400 small block. So the one-piece rear main small blocks have a different diameter snout hole for the flex plate to bolt on. See the difference in the, if I can get this set straight. See the difference in the diameter? So the hole in the center of that flex plate is way smaller than that. There's no way that flex plate's going to fit that 400. So what I think I've realized is nobody sells a 153 tooth small diameter external balance 400 small block flex plate. At least I couldn't find one. So I wound up with this flex plate for a one-piece rear main small block Chevy, which I do have a couple here. So I will eventually use this, but it just kind of sucks. That's what you get into. This 153 tooth for a two-piece rear main doesn't have a counterweight. This is actually for a 350. It's actually off a 350 over there that I had in here before. So anyway, the one that did finally come in, which this is where it got confusing for me. When I went in and checked an order status, it showed that my flex plate was on its way, or it, you know, showed I was getting a package. So I'm like, woohoo, the TCI is coming in. It ended up being the replacement for the first one that the bolt holes didn't line up. They sent me the exact box part number and everything as the first one. And guess what? The bolt holes don't line up. I had to take a die grinder and open up 3 of the holes on that. It was just a little bit. But what's funny is the holes, it was more in line on the second flex plate than the first flex plate. So whoever's doing that, I can't imagine them hand drilling that. I mean, I don't know if they've got slack in their machine that's doing, I don't know what's going on. But just in case anybody down the road comes up with this mess, that is the kind of crap that you get nowadays. So what a freaking nightmare. And that's never why I never did a video of it, because it's just such a long, stupid story that can confuse you, you know. There's just way too much going on for the hassle that I went through. But I do feel Summit should have told me on the phone that they were doing a warehouse reorganization instead of making me wait. I think it ended up being almost 2 weeks before I got the TCI flex plates, which ended up not fitting anyway. But that is pretty much flex plate 101 for you right there. So I ended up having to go with the larger diameter flex plate. I'm just going to have the mini starter out closer to the header, which I do not like, but it's all I can do. So, well, that's kind of fun trying to get that thing all lined up. Combination of the engine hoist and the floor jack and everything, with this being on a roller cart, being that high up off the ground. But I got it working so far. All right, so I'm using 12-point stainless steel polished ARPs in pretty much everything on this whole car. Anything that'll take an ARP, I put it in there. So a lot of you guys know this, but some of you may not. Anytime you ever use a stainless steel bolt, you want to put anti-seize on it every time. Stainless steel bolts will gall, so especially when there's a lot of torque applied. And one thing to consider on stainless steel hardware, if you buy like little stainless steel socket cap, Allen head bolts from your local hardware store and put them in everything, the rating on those bolts are grade 2. So an ARP stainless steel bolt is stronger than a grade 8 somehow with the way they make it. So keep that in mind. If you're going to use those hardware store socket cap buttons or Allen, whatever kind of stainless steel bolt, in anything like a chassis or anything like that, you are playing with fire because it's a grade 2. So make sure you have quality stainless steel in that stuff if you're going to use stainless. Now, I'm using ARP anti-seize, and I use a little brush, a little paint brush, and squirt some out there and brush it on the threads. So you want to use this stuff on everything. So just thought I'd throw that out there because some people may not realize that you need to use anti-seize on stainless steel hardware. I mean, when I'm doing a chassis on a car, even if I'm using regular steel bolts, I still anti-seize them. Anti-seize is a good thing. All right, so this is a very early 700R4. This still has the mechanical speedo assembly in it, so my factory 55 speedometer cable does work on this. But this, I smoothed the casting out on it and cleaned it all up, and I painted this. This is base coat, clear coat. This is called Platinum Pearl. I don't like painting my engines and transmissions all together as one color. To me, it's just a way of getting detail, and a silver color or a gray is a color that's kind of like a factory aluminum-ish, So that's why I did that. There, and I just got anti-seize on the transmission. That's one thing about anti-seize. All you got to do is look at it, and it gets all over you. That stuff gets everywhere. everything is turned completely to the right. I hate this thing. Piece of crap, man. Golly. I don't know if I ever showed that after it was done. I just wiped it down with a wet rag, so my hands are still a little damp, but it was pretty dusty. This is the transmission cross member I made because I built an X center in the chassis, so it takes something kind of small. And that's why those are angled. But it's just a piece of square tubing, and all the ends are plated in. I put in a piece of strap down in there, thick plate. This is a piece of square tubing that I cut down to make it look like an actual cross member tab, but it works really nice. It's pretty heavy duty stuff. It's kind of heavy, but I just used stuff I had here on the shelf. But all the corners, inside and out, everything is molded in, so it's pretty clean. I was pretty proud of that for just a little transmission cross member that you'll rarely see. Well, I got the cross member bolted in and the transmission mount bolts in, but I don't have anything tight. I got the motor mount bolts in, I got the nuts, you know, hand tied on those as well. So now I can go ahead and get the engine hoist out of the way. Not bad for doing it by myself. It took longer, but I don't think I tore up any paint anywhere. I changed out my little piece of rubber hose that's on, you know, from the main fuel line that I put on to my bottom of my mechanical fuel pump. I bought hose from O'Reilly's back when I put the engine in the first time. Let me just show you. So this is the hose that I bought. I've actually got, I think, another foot or two of it over there, but it says fuel hose right on it. But back when I got this car running, this hose was swelled up. So I knew something was up with this particular hose. It just says fuel hose. Doesn't say Gates or anything on it, so what I got is something not very good. So I ended up, I had bought some better hose that's actually fuel hose and put it on there. Throwing that away. I've never seen fuel hose swell up before that was actually fuel hose. I wouldn't think it would do that, being as it's stranded in there, you know, with that whatever that is, that cloth, whatever it is. Anyway. Well, now I've hit another snag. Did not foresee. So on the 350 I had in here, it had a hole drilled in the block right here on this pad. This is another 400 I have. It's right here, so I'm showing you. There's a little 1/4x20 threaded hole here. That 400 doesn't have it. This 400 doesn't have it. This was my custom fabricated wire pass-through that bolted to the back of the block like that to hold all the wires secure to the starter and stuff. So I wish I'd known that when the engine was out. I could have drilled and tapped the engine block, but I didn't even think to look at that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to pull this off, and I'm going to drill a hole here, and I'm just going to put a little L bracket and bolt it to the bell housing right there on that bolt, and then just do a nut and a bolt on the L bracket to hold it in place there. So it's kind of all I can do. It's a band-aid fix, I guess. Well, not really a band-aid, it's just kind of the only option I have. Dang it. I don't want to have to take that and do a bunch of welding and grinding and smoothing and then repainting it, because that's base coat, clear coat, pearl orange on those. I painted those wiring pass-throughs pearl orange just like the engine, so when they're up there, they just kind of hide. They look like they're part of the engine. This one goes here. Now it does have the 2 holes in the block for it, but when the header's on, it's really kind of hard to see it, but it just kind of goes away because it's painted orange with it, you know. Now on the 350, the oil dipstick was on this side, and that's why these are 2 separate pieces. This is actually bigger than this because all the big wires go to the starter. This stuff's for the alternator, but I basically split it there because the dipstick went down through here, and now it didn't have that, which it doesn't really matter, but kind of sucks. And then to top it off, I should have put the intake manifold on first thing because the silicone needs to have time to cure out before I try to fire it. So I was going to go all night and try to fire it up. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is, I'm already pretty sore, so I think I'll go ahead and put the intake on here in a minute. You know, silicone it and get it put on and the bolts torqued down, and then it can sit overnight. I think that's what I'm going to do. But I got the starter on. I got the braided stainless steel ground strap from the firewall to the back of the engine block put on. I got this header on. It's still not done yet, but I did finally modify the oil dipstick piece to put in there. Problem is, I've got those wiring spark plug wire looms I hand fabbed out of square tubing, and I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to put them on first, so I need to go ahead and put the intake on and then put the spark plugs in it and then start running those, and that way I can figure out whereabouts the engine oil dipstick needs to go, because it has a little bracket on there that will bolt right there to the header, but with my wiring things it may have to come out a little bit further. So I've got the other piece off the other braided dipstick for the passenger side dipstick, so if I have to, you know, use one of these pieces or whatever, they actually look kind of the same to me, but I'll figure something out. This is kind of turned into a mess. Even though it's a small block Chevy, I went from a driver's side to passenger side, or passenger side dipstick to driver's side, so it's just created an issue so far. And then not having the holes in the block for that wiring pass through. Golly. And then the starter's out further than it was originally because I had a smaller flex plate on it, so the mini starter was in further. So of course I had to reshim this starter, and I can't find that little nail thing. They send you like a little piece of rod that you pull the gear out on the mini starter to your flex plate, and you're supposed to be able to stick that rod in between the flex plate and the gear on the mini starter, and I can't find that. And I thought it was laying on that shelf. So it must have fell down, and maybe it's under the bench or something there. I don't know. But dang it. Can't go that smooth for me, I guess. That's going to do it for this evening. Well, I didn't get as far as I wanted to, but my back's pretty flared up, so it's time to quit, or I won't even be able to work tomorrow if I keep going. So I got quite a bit done, actually, but I've got a couple of issues that I have to overcome. So I'm going to come out fresh in the morning and get those knocked out and then finish assembling it. And I need to jack up the back of it, put the drive shaft in it. I've got the transmission coolant lines on at the tranny, but of course they're not hooked up here. I got the water pump on, I got the intake on. I wouldn't have been able to fire it up today anyway because the silicone wouldn't be dry on the intake manifold or the water pump. Not that I don't really put a whole lot on the water pump itself on the gaskets, but I put a little bit so the gaskets will stick to the block when I'm putting the water pump up there. But I think I am done for the night, man. Overall, I'm happy. I got quite a bit done. At least it looks like an engine sitting down in there now instead of a big empty hole. Got the throttle linkage hooked up, got the TV cable hooked up, got the stainless carb spring on, distributors in, starters on, fuel pumps on, crank pulleys on. So yeah, I got a little ways, I guess. That'll work. Come out fresh tomorrow. Thanks for watching. That is the end of day one.